Right before I woke up this morning, so actually, I originally woke up around like 5:30, then went back to sleep and woke up around 7 o'clock. But in that time, um, I had a dream, and I can't really say exactly where the dream took place, although it took place outside. Um, it was you know, a cloudy day. Um, there was no rain. Um, and there were many people outside. I don't know who any of these people were, but there were like many others um, outside with me. And at the end of the dream, and I'm going to circle back around this because I'm going to talk about something before this, but I'm going to circle back to the end, after I talk about this other thing. But the end of the dream, and this is like just moments before I woke up, there was like a gust of wind, or some kind of whirlwind, or gust of wind that came up and started blowing me, kind of blowing me away. And I remember in the dream, I there was this tree that I grabbed onto and was hugging so that I would not get blown away. And honestly, I don't know why. I would have been, you know, trying so hard, not to get blown away, but I can tell you that typically, or I should say that in dreams, when you dream about, a wind, coming up, like maybe it's a whirlwind or, some type of wind, coming through and lifting you, like that's typically, you know, can represent the rapture. Um, and so, why do I bring that up? Because there was a dream about, and I don't know exactly, but like a month or so ago, about like a month or two um, ago or something like that, where I had a dream where there were, tornadoes, many tornadoes in an area, and then a whirlwind came right where, the area that I was in. So I had a dream similar to this before, and I explain how that dream is, perhaps talking about the wrath of God, or God's judgment, as well as also talking about the rapture. And then here in this dream, at the end, I experienced the same thing, where at the end of this dream is another, you know, like type of wind, or, the same type of wind or whatever, that lifts me up in the air. So I'm confident that the what God is saying is the rapture, it's possible that the rapture is getting closer. That, I mean, obviously every day it does inch closer and closer every day, but I believe what God's saying here is that the rapture is, it is actually closer than what we realize. Um, now, um, so you got to understand that the end of this dream is a rapture, but there is also something before the dream, is that so in the sky, in this dream, in the sky, there was a phoenix. There was a phoenix that was flying around, and I could see the phoenix. But as soon as I told the other people around, they all looked, for the phoenix, and they could not see it. And in fact, right when I did that, the it was almost like the phoenix, because before I could clearly see it, and then after I had pointed it out, it kind of almost hid itself behind dark clouds, but I was still able to point out where the phoenix was and stuff, but they still weren't able to see it. I was able to still see it, even though it was behind. It went from out in the open to kind of behind a cloud cover, um, but even though it was in cloud cover, I could still see it. I could still see the shadow, but even they couldn't they couldn't see the shadow. It was weird how the other people there, they just weren't able to see it at all. Um, so, and at first, I was, when I woke up, I was like, and dream about a phoenix. Well, like, what is the Lord, saying about that? I know that a phoenix is a mythical bird, um, which therefore, it's not real. It's also, you know, um, kind of paganism, you know, like it's kind of fits into the pagan worship, and so very kind of confused why, I would dream of a phoenix. And in the book that gives you the definitions of what some things mean in dreams, you just don't find a phoenix. Although I should have looked to see if, because there is Phoenix, Arizona, and that might actually be in there. So after this video, there might be an update because I didn't think about that. But I didn't see it in the definition. But the like Phoenix, Arizona might be in, because they have a section where they have like cities and names. They have a like once you get through the um, definitions, there's a section of definitions of cities and names, and I didn't check that. So there might be an update coming. Um, However, um, Phoenix, it is a mythical bird. So it's kind of strange that I would have a dream about a mythical bird, flying, right? But before I got on here, I just out of curiosity looked up to see what this mythical bird symbolizes, what the Greeks and, what the Greek mythology, uh, what symbol this bird from Greek mythology stands for. And in the Greek mythology, it symbolizes life after death. Now, we know that as Christians, there is, because of Jesus died on the cross, there is life after death for those that have um, gotten reborn or born again, and that that have gotten baptized, born again, all that, like put their faith in Jesus and that are following Jesus. There is life for those who follow Jesus. But in many other cultures, there are certain things that they use to that symbolize life after death. Um, and in the Greek mythology, obviously, a phoenix, one, it represents or it symbolizes life after death. So you gotta, just keeping that in mind, um, you can kind of, and again, there could be an update, but keeping what I have written down, um, it symbolizing life after death, perhaps, maybe God was using a phoenix, in my dream to just say, there's a life after death situation. But a phoenix also um, symbolize, like the belief from the Greeks believed that in other cultures that believe in this mythical bird, they it is believed that it will burn itself, like when it gets time for it to die, it will burn itself and then be reborn from those ashes. And so, what could the Lord be trying to say from this, if anything? Because again, it is kind of odd. I'm trying to figure out why I had a dream of a phoenix before I woke up. But when you take a look at Revelation chapter uh, 17, it talks about the, Antichrist, how the Antichrist is going to fall. But then also in Revelation 18, it talks about the city of Babylon. Now, you have to go to other videos of mine to understand that um, the because it says right in chapter 17, Revelation 17 through 18, that the uh, prostitute woman is the great city of Babylon. So and then we know that the great city would be the city of Babylon because it's the very next chapter. But did you know that the city of Babylon is a nation? You find that also in Revelation chapter 17, 9 through 11, or possibly 9 through 12. But probably because it mentions that the seven horns are canes, and then it mentions the scarlet beast as a cane, and we know that canes are rulers of nations. They're rulers of nations. And so that's how we know that the city of Babylon, belongs to, the um, the Scarlet Beast, prostitute, and the city of Babylon are all a part of one system, one nation. And so um, we know that's how we know that the city of Babylon is a nation, and this great nation is going to, it says in Revelation 18 that it's going to be destroyed. And in fact, I did get done just a little while ago, got done watching a video of, somebody putting out a prophetic word talking about a judgment that is coming. And so obviously that would be the confirmation, I believe. Um, but anyways, talking about Revelation 18, and we know that Babylon is going to be destroyed by fire. It says in Revelation chapter 17, I believe 14 through 16, somewhere in there, that the prostitute, which is also the great city, and we know that the great city is a nation, is going to be burned. Um, like it's going to be stripped naked, burned. And so the judgment for Babylon is of fire. It's a of fire. It's and so um this is getting really heavy. So what I can say is that I do believe that a judgment of Babylon is coming, right? Either that or possibly a judgment of the world. Because just take the judgment of Babylon, for example. Why do I say that it's either judgment of Babylon or the judgment of the world? Well, the judgment of Babylon is mainly the precursor to the judgment of the world. I mean, it's pretty much the judgment of Babylon happens before the judgment of the world. So that's why I say that this judgment could be the judgment of Babylon because it's the precursor. But then, theoretically speaking, if Babylon had already taken punishment, this would be, and again, this would be theoretically speaking because I don't believe we've gotten this far, but I do know enough that maybe there's something that I have missed. So, theoretically speaking, maybe it's the judgment of the world because, well, again, we do know that they go hand in hand. The judgment of Babylon is the precursor, is what happens before the judgment of the world. So it's either the judgment of Babylon hasn't come yet, or it has and I, missed it, and, or just hasn't come yet. So I believe that this is either the judgment of Babylon or which would be the prejudgment of the world or the judgment of the world that is coming. And so, because Babylon is the precursor to the judgment of the world, if this is the judgment of Babylon, yes, there are going to be those that God has, chosen, um, that He's going to protect, that He calls His people, that He's going to protect. And out of those people that He protects from the judgment, they're going to rebuild. They're going to rebuild. Like in this nation that we know would be Babylon, God's people are going to be safe. Therefore, we know that from that, they're going to be able to rebuild, and a new nation is going to be reborn. Um, and so when you circle back to the phoenix in the dream, it's interesting to me how it burns itself and gets reborn from the ashes. Let's focus on that. Well, we already pretty much focused on that. Um, the great city of Babylon is also going to what? Get burned. The great city of Babylon is going to get burned. And then we know that because the city of Babylon is the precursor to the judgment of the world, well, what happens after the world gets judged? What happens after that? New heaven and new earth, right? So we know that because when we get to the judgment of the world, we can see that from those ashes comes the new heaven and new earth, right? So we know when we get to the judgment of the world, from that, there's going to be a new heaven and new earth. Earth is going to be reborn. Heaven is going to be reborn. Like a new heaven and new earth is going to come from those ashes. Now, the judgment of Babylon, it's the same thing because the judgment of Babylon is the same. It's just the precursor. Likewise, it's going to burn, but then from the ashes, it's going to be reborn. And so so yes, is a phoenix mythical? Yes, it's a mythical bird. It doesn't really exist. Is it a bird that, the ancient Greeks, possibly worshipped? Yes. So why would I dream about a phoenix? I don't know, but you can see similarities. And this is where I'm going. This is what's very cool is you can see similarities from the phoenix to Revelation, 18, the fall of Babylon, or even which would be the precursor to um, the final judgment of the world. Um, so, um, and again, there could be an update because I still have to go back to that book and look to see if Phoenix, Arizona would be there and kind of get the definition. Um, so I don't know, there could be an update, but it's interesting how I I believe that there really is a judgment coming, but out of that judgment, there is going to be either a nation reborn or a whole new world, heaven and earth reborn. Um, so, and do we know the day or hour of this? No, we do not. But something that you have to keep in mind, because you could be like, well, these prophets are crazy. They're prophesying that this is going to happen and blah, blah, blah. I don't believe all of that. Well, just, okay, keep in mind, though, that there's lots of prophecies in the Bible that still, even today, possibly have not been fulfilled. And some of those prophecies, I do believe, are from Isaiah. And Isaiah, I don't know exactly the timeline of when Isaiah walked, you know, how many years before Jesus, but quite a few, quite a few hundred, if not close to 1,000, or something like that. So how long does it take for some prophecies to be fulfilled? Sometimes a long time. So just because there are and yeah, right now today I do believe that there are many prophets prophesying about the end times. But we don't know the day or hour. Nobody knows the day or hour. So all we can do is prepare ourselves. But we got to prepare ourselves as well as remember that because prophecies can take longer than expected, a lot longer than expected sometimes, but then other times they don't. So, that just something to keep in mind. Um, so, yeah, I'm just gonna leave it leave it at that. So a few things, kind of recap. Yes, I do believe that people are prophesying about the judgment of a judgment coming, and then of blessings and things like that. That probably have to do after a certain judgment and blessings to God's people. Um, and then I do believe that there are prophecies about the book of Revelation and things like that. And I do believe that my dream was about that as well. And then just keeping in mind to prepare, but we don't know the day or time.